3 weeks after the Hopman Cup. 3 weeks after Peter Bellinger bent the rules to save him. 3 weeks after a compassionate decision set the stage for catastrophe. Melbourne, January 21, 1990, Sunday afternoon. You're listening to Snap, the Jon McEnroe default saga. Episode 2, The Breaking Point. January 21, 1990, Flinders Park. The officials arrive first. They always do. Before the photographers, before the broadcasters, before the thousands of fans who'll queue at the gates in the heat. The referees, the line umpires, the supervisors file in and take stock of what they've got. What they've got today is a fourth-round match. Jon McEnroe versus Mikael Pernfors, centre court. The tournament's biggest draw playing the tournament's quietest Swede. And there's something else. Something that's been building since the first serve was struck 3 days earlier.
15 love.
Something that every player at Flinders Park has noticed, complained about, been driven half mad by.
I mean, I was there, I was at the tournament. And there were several factors to what was going on that day. I mean, the first factor was the balls.
Todd Woodbridge, 23-year-old Australian, a gifted doubles player who would go on to win 22 Grand Slam titles. In January 1990, Todd was watching from inside the tournament, close enough to see everything clearly.
I mean, the balls that we were using at the Australian Open at the time was a brand called NASA from Courier. I think you can still buy them at the $2 op shop. They were horrific. They were so inconsistent. The ball wouldn't bounce. They were hard. The balls were different every time you opened a can. I mean, the dog would know that. The dog wouldn't play with them, I don't think. So that was the start of it all.
Nassau balls from Courier. Inconsistent, dead, different every time you opened a can. This is not a small thing. In professional tennis, the ball is everything. The whole game is built on the relationship between a player's racket, their technique, and the physical properties of that small yellow sphere. When the ball doesn't bounce the way it should, when it's too heavy, too flat, too dead, the entire architecture of a match is distorted. For most players, this is an annoyance, something to adjust for, something to complain about in the locker room and then get on with. For Jon McEnroe, a player whose entire genius was built on feel, on touch, delicacy, and the most sensitive hands in the history of the sport, it was something else entirely.
Ball change, please. New balls.
It all started, of course, with the balls. That was where it got sort of Jon's attention, that the can of balls or the 6 balls that were in play at that particular sort of stage in the match weren't good enough.
Mark Petchey, British player turned broadcaster. He watched that match, and his verdict is clear. McEnroe was probably right about the balls.
Now, what's the debate here?
Let's get some balls that bounce. These balls are dead. Every one of these balls we played with.
He said they were all dead. He was having a good conversation with Gerry, and I think for the large part of that Jon was probably right. When you actually look at that ball bouncing, it looked as though it was pretty dead. It didn't look as though it had the kind of life that a normal ball was. So that was kind of where it started, and if you can excuse the pun, that got the ball rolling.
And maybe he's right. I mean, maybe that explains why, in his opinion, obviously, the balls aren't coming onto his racket the way he's learned to expect.
This is important because for decades, the story of McEnroe's default has been told as a story of an out-of-control superstar destroying himself through petulance and ignorance. But the full picture is more complex.
So I think we're going to have an inspection of all the new balls in the box at this point.
The balls really were terrible. The heat really was challenging. The conditions really were difficult. McEnroe wasn't making it up.
Let's see if it's had any effect on Michael's concentration.
I would consider that more gamesmanship than cheating, but listen, it's a very close line, isn't it?
Pam Shriver had played alongside McEnroe at the Hopman Cup. She knew his repertoire better than almost anyone. And knowing the difference, knowing when his complaints were legitimate and when they were theatre, that was one of the hardest jobs in tennis.
You see it in today's game. You see certain kinds of gamesmanship with toilet breaks and injury timeouts, medical timeouts that are a bit suspect. It's been a long list in history of tennis where you try and find little loopholes, find little rules that you can just push the limits.
He knew exactly what he was doing at that particular moment. Gerry, credit to him. I don't know if everybody would have been able to hand out that code violation at that particular stage. And then Jon, obviously, every single ball that was close was getting disappointed that Gerry wasn't actually bending to his will and giving him the calls that he thought was worthy.
And then there's the heat. Melbourne in January is one of the most challenging environments in professional sport. The Australian summer doesn't ask permission. It doesn't offer relief. It descends on the city and the stadium like a physical presence. 38, 40, 42 degrees Celsius, shimmering off the hard courts, bouncing off the stadium walls, cooking players from above and below simultaneously. For most competitors, the heat is an equaliser. You play through it, you hydrate, you adapt. But for the McEnroes, pale-skinned Irish Americans from Queens, New York, the Australian heat was always an enemy.
Well, there are quite a few things going on during the course of the match, the tournament with the balls and with the rules. And, Pernfors was a tough guy. I mean, as far as a competitor goes. And he had Jon flustered and frustrated. The heat in Australia, I know that we McEnroes with our fair skin didn't always love playing in the extreme heat.
Patrick McEnroe, Jon's younger brother, watching from New York.
So I think it was a compilation of many factors, most being Jon's temper. And then number two, for one of the few times in his career, not understanding the rules.
There's something telling in that phrase. Because what Patrick is describing isn't a single moment of madness. It's a convergence. A slow accumulation of pressure and frustration and discomfort that had been building not just through that Sunday afternoon, but through the preceding weeks. The Hopman Cup, the rule change, the decision Peter Bellinger made to let Jon off the hook one last time. And here's the thing about McEnroe's tournament form coming into this match. He was playing well. 3 wins without dropping a set. This was supposed to be his day.
I think we all knew this was Jon's big chance at that point to progress further in the tournament. So we all knew, the crowd all knew, and I think he was crowd favourite at that time. People wanted him to push through. So there was a lot of pressure on him, again on Michael Pernfors. I'm sure Michael was, feeling the pressure, and on the officials.
Gerry Armstrong, chair umpire. He felt the weight of that Sunday afternoon before the first ball was struck. The pressure on McEnroe, the pressure on Pernfors, the pressure on the officials. Everyone in that stadium was carrying something into that match. The stadium had a raw, modern feeling to it, all concrete and steel, designed for capacity rather than charm. It had 15,000 people pressing into every seat, craning for a view, talking in the tight, conspiratorial way that crowds do when they sense they might be about to see something memorable. They just didn't know how memorable it would be.
Well, everyone remembers the default, and it's fascinating looking at it because there's a whole mix of things going on there. There are moments in there where you do feel that he's gone a little too far.
Sam Smith, British commentator, watching the archival footage with the clarity of distance and still feeling the discomfort of that walk. She'll get to that. We'll get to that. But first, the beginning. The moment Di Larkin takes her chair.
I can't exactly recall at what stage of the match I went on, but it was probably late in the second set. And my recollection was it was a packed house, probably because McEnroe was playing. I think it was the 4th round. It was a Sunday.
Di Larkin is a young line umpire from Melbourne who's worked her way through the junior and pro circuits with the quiet dedication that the officiating world demands. No fanfare, no recognition, a volunteer who loves tennis enough to sit in the sun for hours, making calls that players rarely acknowledge and sometimes scream about. Today, she's been assigned to the baseline, ad side, McEnroe's end. She knows what that means.
To my right, they were serving drinks to the crowd, and they'd have their little esky at the end of the row, and it was a bit of a carnival. And anytime there was a situation where maybe there was a close call, the crowd was super involved, and it's hard to shut that out, but I have a strong sense that the crowd were wanting something to happen.
A carnival. That's what a McEnroe match was in 1990 at the Australian Open. It was theatre. It was spectacle. The crowd didn't just want McEnroe to win. They wanted McEnroe to perform.
He knew the boundaries, so he knew how far he could push, and probably maintain now that he maybe got that wrong. But I think going back to that day, I could sense Jon was pretty grumpy.
Grumpy. It's almost a gentle word for what Gerry Armstrong is describing, but it carries the precise shade of meaning he intends. Not explosive, not dangerous, just off. Wrong somehow, like a guitar tuned a half step flat. McEnroe had 3 easy wins to get to this match. He'd barely broken a sweat. But the path to this 4th round encounter had taken him through the Hopman Cup and through whatever confusion he carried from Peter Bellinger's decision 3 weeks earlier. Through the heat and the dead Nassau balls, through the weight of 31 years of playing tennis on every court in every city in the world, and being asked every single time to perform and to deliver and to be Jon McEnroe. He stepped onto court that Sunday afternoon already carrying more than just a racket bag. And across the net stood Mikael Pernfors.
Michael, I'm going to say, was a typical Swede. I mean, I know him say hello and pass pleasantries, but it's not one of the players that I knew very well. And he was very, very, I'm going to say introvert almost. So, Jon wasn't going to get a lot back from him in terms of emotions. And I guess the Stefan Edbergs and the Mats Wilanders and those players at that time were all very similar, pretty calm under pressure and, didn't exhibit a lot of emotion.
Mikael Pernfors, 25 years old, Swedish, a clay court specialist who'd reached the Roland Garros final in 1986 and had been quietly carving out a solid, if unspectacular, career ever since.
Michael's always probing, looking for a weakness, looking for anything that'll work. That's what makes him such a great match player. He's capable of hitting so many different shots.
Pernfors is really making use of the whole court with the angle here. Turns his shoulders well on that backhand. I really like the way he jumps at the ball, but he keeps his head still, which allows him to hit really solid ground strokes.
He and McEnroe had history, friendly history. They'd shared the Hopman Cup just 3 weeks earlier, bidding against each other for Stevie Wonder's jacket at a gala auction, laughing and singing, and being spectacularly bad at knowing when to stop bidding. By all accounts, they liked each other, got on well off the court, which made what was about to happen even stranger. Because Pernfors, quiet, calm, methodical, was exactly the kind of opponent designed to drive McEnroe to distraction. No emotion to feed off, no fire to answer, just a Swede returning every ball, playing percentage tennis, letting McEnroe's frustration build in the silence between points.
Quiet, please.
Well, we said he's got a lot of supporters
First
here.
set, McEnroe to serve.
Before play begins, Gerry Armstrong does what he always does. He reviews the code of conduct, mentally runs through the steps. Warning, point penalty, default. 3 steps, not 4. Not anymore. Since January 1, 3 weeks ago, there is no game penalty. The buffer that McEnroe had spent 15 years relying on. The safety valve that allowed him to push and rage and then pull back at the last moment. It's gone. Armstrong knows this. Every official at Flinders Park knows this. Does McEnroe?
I mean, he was trying to change rhythm of the match. He was in a tough battle and wasn't bothering Pernfors at all. And it looked like he was trying to find a way to creep in. And sometimes it wasn't always by shot making and tactics that he did that. It was about controlling the spaces.
Todd Woodbridge is diplomatic in the way that only someone who's lived inside professional tennis can be diplomatic. The other things he's describing are the tools that McEnroe had perfected over 15 years on tour. The slow walk between points, the request for a ball change, the conversation with the chair umpire that lasts just long enough to break his opponent's rhythm. Pernfors knew all of this, but knowing it and being immune to it, well, they're two different things.
Great players, I've always said, they are the conductor of the match. It's not the umpire. It's those ones. It's from the moment you walk out with them, whether that person might walk first or they wait to get the bigger roar, or in a case of Jon, it's like everything's got to be in place. I'm going to be the guy that's talking to the umpire. You just wait down there and I'll tell you when I'm ready to play.
McEnroe returning to the court. Here comes Michael Pernfors. Had a golden opportunity there in the opening game. 3 double faults from McEnroe. Break point down.
Quiet, please. Pernfors to serve.
The match is alive. First set to McEnroe. Brilliant, controlled, precisely the kind of tennis that reminds everyone what he still is. Second set to Pernfors.
30 all.
Patient, relentless, the Swede absorbing everything and returning it.
Fit man, Pernfors.
All he'll need to be is McEnroe just comes underneath the ball, play lovely little drop shot. Pernfors scrambles it up. It's long.
1 set all. Third set begins. McEnroe breaks. 1-love. He's in front. The crowd feels the shift. 15,000 people leaned forward slightly, collectively.
My recollection is that it was 1-love to Jon McEnroe in the third set. He had just broken serve, and he's now on the left-hand side of the court, or the left-hand side of the chair umpire, and it gets to 30 all, and he serves to Pernfors. Pernfors hits, I think it's a forehand back.
Di Larkin is watching the ball. That's her job, to track a specific part of the court, to be ready for the moment the ball lands near or on her line, to make a call instantly and correctly. As a line umpire on the baseline, she's responsible for the deepest and most consequential calls in the match. Long balls, baseline calls, the ones that end rallies.
And my role is I've got to get my eyes to that line, to that back edge of that line as soon as possible, so that I can see a ball that's clearly in or clearly out. So I see he's coming into the court to do a volley, and my eyes go to the line, and the ball is out, and I call it out.
The ball is out. Di Larkin makes the call. Confident, clear. She's certain. And then she becomes aware that she's about to have company.
I call it as I see it, and it was just out. I was confident and I still backed my call. And then, out of my peripheral vision, I just look to the left and I can just see Jon McEnroe. He's not happy at all. He's just hands on hips and staring at me. And I just, look away. But then, knowing he's not happy with my call, there is a level of anxiety starting to course through my veins.
A line umpire, by training and by protocol, does not engage, does not respond. The chair is an official position, not a conversation. But she is human. And Jon McEnroe, hands on hips staring at her, is one of the most famous, most intense, most psychologically overwhelming figures in the history of the sport. She knows the call was right. She keeps telling herself the call was right.
What's going to happen now? Like, he doesn't say anything, but his body language was He's not happy. He's down the other end of the net, other end of the court to me. What's going to happen? And everything in my mindset is concentrate, die, next point, that's gone, next point, you're not overruled. Gerry Armstrong's happy with your call. If he wasn't, he would have overruled.
Gerry Armstrong said it was too close, he couldn't possibly overrule. I would certainly agree with that.
And in my mind, I'm thinking, I hope he wins this game, McEnroe, because then maybe when he comes down my end, he might have relaxed a bit.
It's a very human thing to hope for, and it tells you everything about the atmosphere building around this match. But McEnroe doesn't win the game. He loses his serve.
And it's 1 game all.
1-1 in the third set. McEnroe had the break. He's now lost it. The temperature, air temperature and the other kind, ticks up another notch. And then Pernfors loses his serve. McEnroe breaks back 2-1.
My memory is that Pernfors lost serve, so McEnroe's 2-1 up at the change of ends, and they go and sit down, and then McEnroe's going to come to my end.
Change of ends. 90 seconds. Players sit, towel off and drink. The crowd buzzes. Larkin is doing calculations. She knows that at the change of ends, players walk from one end of the court to the other, which means McEnroe, who's been at the far end, will now walk directly past her chair. She's sitting right at the corner of the court, exactly on his path to the baseline, from where he'll serve next. If he's going to say anything at all about the call she's made, this is when it will happen.
And because I was on the same side of the court as the chair umpire, he has to walk past me. So I'm just in my head, and I can still remember it thinking, if he's going to say anything, it's going to be now. Be ready, be ready.
McEnroe gets up early. The 90 seconds aren't finished, but he's on his feet, moving. This is another form of control. Not waiting for the chair umpire to call time. Just going. Owning the pace of the moment. Larkin tracks him in her peripheral vision. She's looking straight ahead, down the line. Neutral, professional, giving nothing away.
So he's coming down towards me. I'm ready. He walks past me. I breathe a sigh of relief thinking, I'm okay, I'm off the hook. This is good. But then the ball kids bounce the ball to him, and so now he's got a ball in his hand, and for some reason he walks across to me. And it's there for everyone to see. And now I'm going, oh my God.
The footage is extraordinary. McEnroe, standing in front of a line umpire's chair, bouncing a ball on his racket, staring at her. 15,000 people watching. Some laughing, some leaning forward. The camera finding Larkin's face. No expression, looking straight ahead, while one of the most famous athletes in the world stands 2 feet in front of her.
So all I can do is do what I'm doing now in this interview, is just look ahead, concentrate, look ahead. But the crowd are laughing, and the crowd are egging him on, and the crowd thinks this is entertaining, and he starts bouncing the ball up on his racket. And it's not until I've looked at replays that that's 7 times he does this. But at no stage does he speak to me or say anything. And he's got the white zinc on his lips, he's got his headband on, he's not saying anything.
7 times, 7 bounces of the ball. And then he walks away. No words, just the stare, just the presence, just John McEnroe making unmistakably clear what he thinks of her call and what he thinks of Larkin, without saying a single word that could be penalised.
I'm not sure if he's trying to be funny, if he's trying to be serious, because he doesn't say anything. And there'll be people out there who won't believe me when I say that he didn't say anything, because in the past 30-odd years, people keep telling me, he swore at you, he said this, he said that. I said, he did not say anything to me, he didn't speak to me. He just stood in front of me. And I'm looking at him through my sunglasses thinking, what do I do? All I could do was say nothing, concentrate, and I lowered my eyes just to look straight ahead. And all I could see was his shorts. I just had to focus, and there he is. And I'm not trying to be funny here, but there he is with his fly half down. And, that's no big deal. But that's all I could do was don't laugh, concentrate, look ahead, and then just pray that he doesn't say anything.
This is not weakness. This is the opposite of weakness. Sitting motionless while 15,000 people watch and John McEnroe stares at you from 2 feet away. That takes a specific, steely kind of courage.
I watch that back now, and you look and you go, oof, that wasn't good. I wonder what he says if he watches that back now, because that was pure intimidation. But there are a lot of players that could intimidate lines people to get a call go their way. We didn't have electronic line calling back then. And you could get that. You could get the umpires to lean your way. And they did. Whether they knew it or not, they did. Because they needed to control that player and keep that player happy. All of that stuff is human emotions that happens. And John was very good at understanding that. But when he gets to the point of that was... he's lucky not to be defaulted there, to be honest. I think if you did that today, you might almost be gone.
But Gerry Armstrong, up in the chair, has seen enough.
I could tell he was on edge, and then when he went down that end, he was pretty intimidating to the line umpire and was just standing in front, really staring her out. So that crossed the line for me. That was just... and I think I remember saying to him, that's just blatant intimidation. So
I looked at that as blatant intimidation of an official.
I gave him a warning for that, and he got on and played after that.
Code violation, unsportsmanlike conduct, warning Mr. McEnroe.
First step. Under the old rules, McEnroe had 3 more chances before being defaulted. Under the new rules put in place on January 1, 3 weeks ago, he has 2. Warning, point penalty, default. Armstrong delivers the warning from the chair with the measured tone of a man who knows exactly what he's starting.
There's a shot that cuts to Gerry, and you can see him almost touch his face and look and go, oh, here we go, I've got to give it. And he does give that warning.
The crowd receives the warning with a mixture of excitement and unease. This is what they came for. But now that it's happening, the energy shifts slightly. Something is no longer just entertainment. McEnroe accepts the warning, argues briefly, then plays on. A few calming games. Tension eases. Maybe he got the message. The match continues in the heat. For a few games, it looks like the warning did its job. But this is John McEnroe, and something is building inside him that all the warnings in the world cannot stop. And then he misses a ball.
Well, I've tried to put that out of my mind, as you could probably imagine. Probably wasn't my crowning achievement. So I don't remember a whole lot of what, led up to me walking on the court. But I do remember it was very hot. Remember that I felt like, I know this is hard to believe, but I felt like I was getting some bad calls, particularly in the baseline. So I decided to go over and sort of give him a stare down. I figured that way I couldn't get any type of warning or anything. If I didn't say anything, how could anything happen?
His own account. 30 years later, John McEnroe talks about it with the strange mixture of remorse and amusement that he always brings to this story. He thought the stare down was safe. No words, no call. He was technically right about that. He was technically wrong about everything else.
Thank you.
I was warned for intimidating an official or something to that nature. So, the match went on. It was extremely difficult to play the way I wanted to play just because of the conditions, really. And Mikhail's a sort of an awkward player to play. But I was, in a winning position.
Difficult to play the way he wanted. The conditions breaking him down. Pernfors being awkward, in the way that methodical, emotionless Swedes are always awkward for a player whose game runs on feel and instinct. And then he misses a ball, throws his racket to the ground.
Advantage Penfolds.
The crack is audible across the court.
In a moment of frustration, sort of, hit my racket on the ground. You could hear a crack.
A crack. Audible. Unmistakable. In 1990 at the Australian Open, a cracked racket is an automatic code violation. The rule is clear, unambiguous, not subject to interpretation. The racket is damaged. The violation is given. There is no discretion here.
Code violation, racket abuse, point penalty, Mr. McNamee. Game Penfolds.
Now, in those days, a cracked racket was an automatic code violation. It's not so much now, but then it was. So it wasn't anything personal. It wasn't anything I just had to give a point penalty, which Jon contested. He came up and I think he was saying something along the lines, every intention of playing with it, broken, cracked, whatever.
Of course he contests it. This is Jon McEnroe. But Armstrong has no choice. The rule isn't flexible, and the point penalty isn't a punishment, it's a consequence. Step 2 of a 3-step process that Armstrong is following with complete precision.
It's, I guess, under the rules that I've never read, an umpire can call you for, a penalty. He doesn't have to. Most of the time they don't if you keep playing with the same racket. That's how it was then. You don't see it happen very often now because players switch rackets so much anyway. And then he called me for point penalty. And so I was like, could you cut me some slack? In essence, what I was like, can you cut me a little slack?
Cut me some slack. Because it captures something essential about where Jon McEnroe's head is at this moment in the match. He's not panicking. He's not calculating. He's appealing to something human, to the recognition that he's Jon McEnroe, that surely Gerry Armstrong can see what's going on here and give him just a little room to breathe.
It's a little warm out here, and I'm battling pretty hard, and this could go to a 5th set, and, I don't really think that's necessary. So I insisted on having, when he was, giving me the usual routine, call the supervisor, knowing full well that nothing was going to happen there either, because the 122 times I called the supervisor, nothing ever happened.
Calling the supervisor has always been theatre, a performance of protest, a delay, a way to break the match's rhythm and buy himself time to compose, to recalculate, to make his point known. Ken Farrar walks on, the supervisor.
Ken Farrar came on and explained the situation as I explained to it, that broken racket, point penalty.
Farrar is a polarising figure, respected by some, despised by others. The decision stands.
For somebody like me, I'd get fined and warned. But for him, because he was such a superstar, he'd get away with this stuff. He'd get away with stuff that I couldn't possibly dream of. And time again.
I'm a big one in the sport that feels as though players need to show more emotion. We are a sport, but we are also an entertainment business. And therefore, if you kind of shut that all down and make people robotic, you are going to lose eyeballs on the sport. And I think Jon had a very valid point at that particular stage. I was going to play it. How bad was it, really?
The question is whether or not I'm going to continue playing if I can't play with the racket, right? Because there's a little crack. Does that mean there's abuse? There's a slight crack. What's the definition of a break? Unable to continue playing with it? It's not broken. Broken when you can't play with it. You want to look at it?
Let's play.
McEnroe turns from Farrar and walks back towards the baseline. He is furious, genuinely, deeply furious. Not at the rules, which he doesn't fully understand, but at the entire accumulation of that afternoon. The dead balls, the baseline call, the stare-down warning, the heat, Pernfors just quietly winning games at the other end while McEnroe burns. He says something.
Ken Farrar has overheard McEnroe swearing. It's a very interesting situation now.
So he turned and let forth a fairly abusive few words, which we heard.
A couple choice words were exchanged. I figured going back, they'll probably call me for the game penalty.
And then obviously didn't really realise that there had been one less code violation allowed, and that was where he got himself into trouble because obviously he dropped the F-bomb and the ripcord was called.
The game penalty. That's what McEnroe thinks is coming. The game penalty that no longer exists. The game penalty that was removed from the code on January 1, 3 weeks ago, and which McEnroe, who never read the rulebook in 15 years of professional tennis, has no idea is gone.
I mean, as he walked back to the line, obviously Jon said what he said, and Ken just looked up at me, and I think we both said the same thing. You know, that's a default. So Ken said, just announce it. So I did.
Code violation, verbal abuse, default, Mr. McEnroe.
Whoa! Only to hear, as I was preparing to return serve,
Game, set, match, Pernfors.
That's the end of the match.
Game, set, match, Pernfors.
Game, set, match, Pernfors. Not the game penalty McEnroe expected. Not the warning that would have cost him a game but left him alive in the match. The whole thing over. Default. The first time in history of men's singles at a Grand Slam. For a long moment, one of those stretched, unreal moments that people who were there still describe with the careful language of disbelief. Nobody quite processes what they've just heard.
And I'm looking around the court and I'm thinking, how am I going to get out of here? Because we always used to enter the court opposite. And I thought, there's no way I'm walking across the court to get out over that exit. So I just got down in the chair and ran to the nearest exit. And as I went through that tunnel, my vision looking back was Jon standing at the baseline, just still staring down the court, and I was gone.
Gerry Armstrong gets down from the chair and runs. And John McEnroe stands at the baseline and stares. The crowd, who have been participants in this match, egging McEnroe on, revelling in the theatre, wanting something to happen, now don't quite know how to feel. They got what they wanted, and it's terrible.
I think it's pretty common knowledge that Jon didn't have a great relationship with the supervisor either at that point. So there was Peter Bellinger and the supervisor. And that's where he got undone. And there was that bit of language, and then he's out of there. It was shock.
You know, for him to be defaulted, it was funny, I think, amongst the players. I mean, I remember hearing about this, being shocked. And I go, well, it's going to happen eventually. But, yeah, well, somebody actually did it. You know, I thought it's got to happen eventually. But, wow, that actually did happen. Somebody actually did have the balls to do it. Part of me was giggling and going, well, that's a bit of justice. Finally, he's got what he deserved. But, ooh, that's a bit tough as well. Because, you know, here he is coming out the Australian Open and playing. And he was a friend of mine, so I was like, okay.
Pat Cash, watching from outside the tournament, coming back from injury, processing two contradictory responses at once, the satisfaction of justice and the complicated loyalty of friendship. That's the thing about McEnroe. It was never simple. Even the people who thought he'd pushed it too far too many times, even they felt something complicated when it finally happened.
I can just remember Ken feeling for us because none of us wanted to do this. It's not something you go on court thinking, well, this is what's going to happen. And it was quite traumatic for Ken as well. I mean, that's the role I'm in now, where you walk on the court and sort of it ends up in a default. That's quite a stressful situation, but you've got to do what you've got to do.
Gerry Armstrong says that quietly, without drama. He means it. There is no triumph in his account of what happened. No sense of a man who finally got to pull the trigger on the sport's most difficult player. Just the steady, professional recognition that the rules existed, the violations happened, the steps were followed, and the outcome, however shocking, however historic, was inevitable. The machine of the code of conduct, once set in motion, ran its course. What McEnroe actually said, we'll hear in the next episode. Because the words matter. They matter to the officials who heard them. They matter to McEnroe, who's been living with them for more than 30 years. It's about rules that changed without anyone telling the player they applied to. It's about a line umpire who sat perfectly still while the world's most famous athlete stood 2 feet in front of her. It's about a chair umpire who did his job with absolute precision and then ran for the nearest exit. It's about the moment when professional tennis decided it was done being intimidated. And it's about Jon McEnroe. Brilliant, infuriating, utterly singular. Discovering at the age of 31 that he'd finally run out of chances he didn't know he was using. Next time on Snap.
Both of the first 2 warnings that I got, I felt were totally unwarranted. The third one, I definitely deserved something.
He heard McEnroe say what he said, some fairly serious profanities. I stepped on the bottom step of the umpire's chair and said, "You have to default him."
John just had this look of incredulity on his face, like, I can't believe this is actually happening.
Snap is an AO Originals podcast with Backchat Studios. Written and edited by Lochlainn Harte. Narrated and produced by Jon Hoevenaars. Supervising producer is Adrian Houghton. Original interviews by Shannon Davis. Recorded by Marcus Buttigieg. Executive producer is Xavier Muhlebach. Thank you to the guests whose voices helped tell this story.